Hello everyone, it's a new year, which means a new session of the Colorado State Legislature. In a moment, I'm going to talk about what to expect from the state capitol with Ed Sealover, who writes The Sum and Substance, which is a great resource for keeping track of state policy news. First though, I'd like to mention the most recent estimates of state GDP growth. US GDP typically increases at an annual rate of about 2%. In the third quarter of 2023, the US had very strong growth. Real GDP grew at a 4.9% annual rate. Now we know that Colorado's GDP grew even faster, a 5.8% annual rate. Colorado's GDP growth has exceeded the national rate in 4 of the past 5 quarters. We'll get initial estimates for the fourth quarter of 2023 for the US later this month. The state level data comes out with a longer time lag. We'll get it near the end of March. And now, my conversation with Ed Sealover. So, Ed, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here today.
So, last year, Governor Polis tried to push through a big land use reform, and it didn't get through the legislature. What do you see happening on that issue this year?
Well, I see him coming back with a fairly similar idea, but from what we hear, it's probably going to be split into a few different bills to give at least some of them a better chance of getting through. Now, Governor Polis just recently came out with a new land use and transportation plan that really relies heavily on the skeletons of Senate Bill 213 from last year. And he essentially really wants to keep pushing this idea of increasing apartments or possibly condos along busy corridors and transit corridors. I think he's still going to be pushing a bill this year that will say we'd like to override some of the local ordinances to allow for building specifically along these busy corridors. I don't think you're going to see him maybe come back with the idea that, hey, we want to be able to build 6 plexes in your backyard anymore. That would seem to be the lowest reception part of last year's bill. But I think we will see him pushing this idea. What'll be interesting to see how others try to jump into this too. One of the things I think we're definitely going to see, I know we're going to see this year, is a bill pushing construction defects reform. A subject that's long plagued the industry here and has led to, in many ways, the dearth of condominiums we see right now. Proponents are saying, look, if you're going to push for more of these to be built, we need legal machinations to have that happen too. So I think we're going to see several Polis bills. I think we're going to see several bills adjacent to what Polis wants to push, and it'll be very interesting to see how much will come out of this and how much legislators will still be resistant to the idea of overriding local government in any way.
Has the governor done anything to try to get local government more on board with some of these ideas?
It depends who you talk to. Generally, though, the Colorado Municipal League says not so much. They are very open to the idea of a bill that we expect to be coming from Senator Barb Kirkmeyer that takes a small portion of Senate Bill 213 and really would dole out grants to local governments to do local housing inventories and to study how they can boost their housing portfolios within there. But the idea of the state coming in and saying, no, we're going to override this is still extremely unpopular. So I think that's going to be a big fight. And the dynamics have changed a little bit in the Senate from last year, but not a ton. Remember, it was the Senate Majority Leader who ran this bill last year and couldn't get it through his own chamber. He has left the legislature. So I think it may have even tougher going ahead of it at this point.
What are the other big issues you expect to come up in this session?
Oh, there's going to be a ton this year involving business. I think we're waiting to see exactly what comes out of a committee that met for 4 months in the offseason, looking at ways to improve ozone and to decrease ozone pollution, I should say, here in Colorado. There's a lot that's been bandied about that would make it a little tougher to get permits, particularly for what are now considered minor sources. These are each of the wells that are asking for permits to operate up and down down the Front Range and out in western Colorado. I think we could see something like that, which could lead to a big fight because the governor essentially said last year he didn't like that idea. But we're going to see some clean energy bills, and that'll probably be the epicenter of the fight right there. I think we're also going to see a return of the efforts to boost workers' rights. Now, last year there was a bill called the Fair Work Week proposal that would have really changed the way that retailers and restaurateurs do their scheduling, requiring them to give schedules 2 weeks in advance and to pay workers if they change it, either by taking away or adding more hours to them, to pay them more in order to do that. That went down bipartisanly in its first committee. There are rumors that the bill may come back this year with all other industries in there, but not restaurants, which seem to be the main industry causing that bill's demise. We have also heard talk of the possibility of a bill coming forward that would that would set up a 32-hour work week, essentially saying if you have someone working more than 32 hours, you will pay them overtime if they're paid on an hourly basis. That's going to have some very tough sledding ahead of it too, I would imagine. And then I think we're also going to see more work in the area of workforce development. Governor Polis has already put this forward as a priority. He put $60 million into his proposed budget to do things like boost the number of apprenticeships that are being offered in the state, and to help intermediaries help to get some of those apprenticeships going at smaller businesses. I think we're going to see a lot of discussion about that because we still see a lot of businesses that are having trouble finding the talent they need, and whether that's going to come in creation of maybe new regional talent development summits, whether that's going to come through these apprenticeships, or it's going to be focused in areas like quantum, where we are now one of the nationally recognized hub. I think you're going to see a lot of proactive business bills going in that direction.
Interesting. So I'm going to follow all of this by reading the sum and substance. For those who aren't familiar with the sum and substance, tell us a little bit more about what it is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The Sum and Substance is a business policy news site that I launched in February of 2023 when I left the Denver Business Journal to come work for the Colorado Chamber of Commerce. It follows very specific business policy issues, a lot of them revolving around state government, since we as the Chamber do represent all businesses in the state. And while I work for an advocacy group, I also try to write these down the middle, getting both sides into each of the stories, because I'm just a firm believer that nobody gets smarter hearing one side of the story. So we're going to dive into all of the business issues coming before the legislature this year, really try to examine what they might mean to employers that are out there, and also look at some of the things that are coming out of the state regulatory bodies, such as the Colorado Air Quality Commission, Air Quality Control Commission as well. So that's the Sum and Substance in a nutshell. If you are interested in what business policy means to your ability to operate your business, hopefully it's a site, tsscolorado.com, that you are reading.
All right, excellent. Ed, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation.
We'll see you next week.